Okay, David, thank you very much for taking time to be with us today in our audience. For anyone that's watching that's not familiar with who you are, can you just take a little bit of time and tell them who you are, what you
Yeah,
specialize in, and what we're going to talk about today?
yeah, absolutely. So my name's David Hoyt. Really honored and privileged to be with you today. I serve as a strategist, a coach, a consultant, and I do something called Life Plan. I've had the privilege of working with John Maxwell for 19 years, numerous capacities, part of his inner circle. Most recently as president of his organization. Incredible ride, incredible journey. And that really kind of set me up for my second half in what I'm doing now, working with individuals, working with a lot of small business owners around discovering purpose in life, and then helping coach them to achieve their dreams and goals. So, love what I do and love being part of conversations like this.
So I guess a great place to start is why does every business owner need a life plan?
So I actually believe it even goes beyond business owners, but I love working with leaders and I love working with business owners because of the impact that they have, not just on themselves but on so many people. For me, if you don't mind, I'll give a quick kind of my background on why I'm so passionate about this. So as I look at defining moments in my life, in 2001, I was coming to the end of the year and I heard a lesson by a guy by the name of Todd Duncan called Annual Review with You. And his whole idea was to take a week between Christmas and New Year's and get away and really reflect on the past year and plan for the upcoming year. And I'd actually even learned the habit or the practice from John Maxwell. And so I decided to do it. And I got away for planned 8 hours, had kind of my guide of what the day was going to look like. And as I began the day, I realized his whole process was predicated on having a life plan. And so I kind of audibled that day and I created my first version of a life plan. And here's why that was a defining moment for me. Because up until that time, I realized I had two buckets that I was measuring success in. One was financial, the other was career. And I was very strategic, I was very goal oriented in those areas. But I'm kind of embarrassed to say now those were really the only two areas that I was living intentionally. And as I thought about life that day, I identified 10 different areas for me that I wanted to be intentional, strategic in, and really redefine what success looked like. And for 16 years, that was a defining moment that guided my intentionality of how I was living. And I'm proud of a lot of the accomplishments or how that shifted my focus. As I approached halftime and really felt some different stirrings and callings within my heart for my second half to work individually with leaders. I knew I needed a guide. I knew I needed another kind of defining moment to really get clarity on what my second half looked like. So I went to an outside guide to take me through this 2-day life plan process developed by the Patterson Center. And it was a game changer for me. It was a game changer because one of the things I'd recognize or realize up until that point, when I would do my own life plan, I was a great forward thinker, but I didn't do a lot of inner reflection or looking back at my story. And in this process, I looked at my story. I saw the patterns. I saw the ups. I saw the downs. And it really gave me clarity on determining my future. And so out of that, I realized this for me is center of the bullseye of what I want to do for other leaders. I know the value of being intentional in your life for my own journey. And now I had a process to take other leaders through. And so I feel like my purpose and calling is to help leaders live lives of purpose, courage, and intentionality. I know most business owners, we get focused on our vocational bucket. We put in countless hours, countless focus. We're strategic. We have goals. But I believe a holistic life is more than just our vocation. It's taking care of ourselves personally, our family, our community being involved, and our church or spiritual life if that's important to us. And so I believe everybody should have a life plan in order that when they get to the end of life, they know that they lived a life of courage, purpose, and intentionality. So a little long, you can tell the passion, and it really comes out of my story. Yeah. What I found is it typically takes us bumping up against something. And it could be a couple things. It could either be a major decision that we know we need to make. Oftentimes it is vocationally driven. Doesn't have to be. Could be a personal or a family decision. But all of a sudden, there's some haze or there's some lack of clarity, and a person realizes I need a guide. I need some direction. I need clarity. Is the driving, compelling force to get somebody to say, I need to reach out to somebody. I'm willing to set aside 2 days. It is the rare person when everything just feels like it is going on cruise control and got it figured out, life by the horns, great clarity. We feel like we got it. But I know from personal experience and from the leaders that I work with, we all come to crossroads or forks in the road where we are looking for clarity and certainty in the direction that we should go. And it's typically at those times when we begin to ask the questions much more um, aggressively, or we're searching for outside help and answers, is when people raise their hand and say, I need this. This is the right time. Yeah. 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 Yeah, I would say so. I believe, like, as we're looking for our unique life purpose and calling, one of the beliefs that I have is we all have a very unique reason that we are here on this planet. A lot of people, I believe, they ping in their soul at some level and they ask, "Why am I here?" They don't know. They don't know how to find the answer, and then they stuff that internal voice. They fill it up with white noise. But I believe when people begin to ping, and when people begin to ask that question, it goes from this just general awareness to searching and discovering. And I think it's in searching and discovering when most people raise their hand and say, I got to find out. I know I'm on this planet for a reason. I got to find out the reason why. And that's when they'll come to Life Plan. But as people begin the search and discover phase, I think just reading books for personal growth, a couple that I highly recommend and have been impactful for me is a book called The Call by Oz Guinness. Also in People's Growth Journey, two by John Maxwell, that I highly recommend is Intentional Living and 15 Laws of Growth. And so I would say if people are beginning to ping and have some questions, I'd start by reading a couple of those books, finding some answers, and seeing if that will take you in the discovery process on kind of a quest for more. And I know for my journey, it did that.
Perfect. I think that leads into another good question. We live in a society where focusing on ourselves or being selfish or quote unquote self centered is frowned upon. And I know that I meet tons of people, especially anyone over, say, the age of 30, that when you ask them what they want, they have no clue because they haven't even thought about it since they were a kid. Because, we're kind of like always taught you got to help other people, focus on other people, do other things. So, say I'm 35-year-old business owner that's sitting back and going, what is my purpose? What do I really want? And I can't think of it. I can't get there. How do I start that? Like, how do I get that flowing again? So I'm like that kid at Christmas. It's like, I want this, 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 this. Like, here's what I want. Like, I want to be a fireman. I want this. I want that.
Yeah.
How do we get that piece back so we can figure out that life plan of
Yeah.
purpose?
Well, it's a really good question. Here's what I realized, and especially knowing, we're talking business owners here. We are all so wired to think about the future, and what I find is because we're so future oriented, we rarely take time to pause and go inside and to really think about what do I want, and ask the kind of questions that you're bringing up. And so, if someone is beginning to realize that all I do is think about the future, or there's some internal noise, or there's some internal questions I haven't reconciled or resolved, um, I would challenge you to get away for at least a day, ideally an overnight, so 2 days, and only have one commitment that you make to yourself as you go into it. And that is, I'm not going to think about the future. All I'm going to do is think about my story. What are the experiences I've had? What have I learned from those experiences, both positive and negative? and then really begin to listen to your heart. Like, what is the inner voice telling you? I think here's my belief: we all have an inner voice. We all um, have thoughts, feelings. I believe it's our soul speaking to us. But I think so many of us choose not to listen and are scared of it, because a lot of times we realize we're going down this path, and maybe our heart is actually in a little bit of a different direction. We don't know how to reconcile it. So we stuff it with white noise. So my challenge and encouragement would be, if you're asking yourself those questions, get away. Don't think about the future. Think inward about both your story as well as get in touch with what you're really thinking, feeling about, and just see where that leads you. Journal, write. Nobody's going to see it. It's not right or wrong, good or bad. What are those emotions? What are those thoughts? And I think as we lean into that, we get more comfortable in it, we discover it, and that kind of leads us on this path for searching and discovering purpose, calling, direction, those kind of things.
Perfect. I think that's great. A lot of business owners especially need that time away just to get the noise out of there for many reasons, but I think that's a perfect strategy. So
Can I add just one quick thing? A discipline I've put in place for me. I call them B days. I'm such a producer. Like, I was raised in a production home. I mean, I am just born to produce. And when I've self-discovered over time that I was so wired for that, I realized I'm gonna have to put in place a process. Like, I can't trust myself to pull away and do this consistently. So a commitment I made is once a quarter, I'm gonna get away for a day for one of these. I call them B days. I'm not producing anything. I am listening to my heart, my soul. I'm journaling. For me in my journey, I feel like I'm trying to listen to God's voice. And so I challenge leaders. It may not be every 90 days, whatever works for you, but have these kind of B days where they're listening days. The one other thing I would say that works for me is I found a place that I just feel at home. It's away from my daily routine. It's 2 hours away. I live north of Atlanta. It's Highlands, North Carolina, up in the mountains. I'm a mountain guy. And I get up there and I can slow down. I can just feel kind of my body, my mind relax. So find that place where you can go to think. So anyway, there's a little best practice for folks to consider.
No, that's perfect. And I remember reading that on your website, actually. I thought that was interesting. So what are the most important aspects of that life plan? Like, when we're starting out, maybe we don't have the time to go to a program or to even do something. But if we had to get just a few things down to get started to focus on, what are those really important aspects that we need to consider?
Yeah. So the first is getting perspective on your life. And this is what, for me, when I started doing my own life plan, I didn't get perspective. All I did was think future. But I really believe the key to having the most successful type of life plan is we first got to get perspective on where I'm at now. And so it's getting in touch with your story. It's getting in touch with your core values and your talent and heart. What are the core talents that are unique to you that you have? What does your heart really beat for? What is your unique life purpose? What is the vision to get there? And so as I take people through the process, we spend actually about a day and a half on the perspective piece, and it's more the looking backward and looking inward. And I find when we do that, the plan almost writes itself. And so a key to it, you can't have a life plan without walking out with a strategy to live life. So we get there in the end. But it all first comes from getting perspective and then having an action plan that's balanced, not just vocation, but personal, family, vocation, church, and community. And then the last piece is what we call a life net, and that's your accountability. It's who's going to be that life plan partner that truly is going to walk alongside you, that you envision for the rest of your life. If you're married, oftentimes it's a spouse, but I always encourage, in addition to a spouse, to have somebody same sex that is just a friend, a confidant, a partner in life that will keep you accountable, and then also having a network of mentors, friends, and proteges. And I find the more we go public with who we want to be and the things that we want to do, there's naturally a greater level of accountability. And so having this life net in place is a critical part of it as well.
That's smart. So say we take that first step and we do figure out our purpose, and it's completely misaligned with the people in our life and our business. Very cool. What's the first step there? What if we sit back and go, okay, I've created a life that's completely out of alignment with what I want because maybe I never took that time to sit back and I kept chasing producing. So where do I go?
So I love that question. I mean, I love that question. And here's why. I think that's the number one fear that people have in asking themselves the true heartfelt questions and ultimately doing a life plan. What happens if I discover my life is misaligned from my core purpose? And I can't tell you how many folks that I talk with. I work with men and women, but work predominantly with men. And what I'm so passionate about this and also can get so frustrated is I talk to so many guys that are going down this track in life, this vocational track. They're miserable. They don't like it. They typically actually provide a pretty good income for their lives, but they're off course with their passions and who they feel like they're called to be. And they know it, but they are scared to do anything about it. And here's my challenge for folks is when we discover that there's some misalignment, you don't have to walk out with all the answers. You don't have to know exactly what you're going to do or make some radical shift or kind of throw away these things over here in order to go this direction. But here's what I challenge people. Just take a step in the direction that you feel like you should go. And what I believe is when we just take some kind of a baby step, doors of opportunity will begin to open if that is truly the direction that we should go. But I think so many people are scared, they don't even take the first step. All they know is that there's a disconnect, but they keep going down the road just because it's what's comfortable and easy. You don't have to have it all figured out, but just take a step in the direction that you feel like your heart is called in and aligns with your core talents. And I believe it won't be smooth, it won't be easy. I'm not saying it's the yellow brick road, but I do believe that when you begin to move in that direction, doors of opportunity open, and all of a sudden one day you look up and realize I'm living the life of my dreams. And if I would have had to have all the answers back here, would have never made it. But if I simply started taking steps, all of a sudden doors will open and you'll start to move in that direction where your heart is truly feeling called.
That's perfect. I mean, and actually, I tell people similar things all the time. You meet people in the world that want to get into business, and I'm like, focus on going forward. Focus on going the right way. Because too many people do get stuck in the past, and they think that's all they can have, and it doesn't work if you stay there. So I think that's really great advice. So, what's the big mistake that people make when creating a life plan? Like, what's the one thing that everyone needs to avoid when they start out doing this?
So, to me, it would be you just go back to life as you know it. We all have a lot of responsibilities. We're all busy. One of the things we do in life plan is a strategic time assessment. And oftentimes what is revealed there is, quite frankly, we're putting way too much time into the work bucket. And my challenge to leaders and business owners is, all right, what's that maximum number of hours that you're going to spend in your vocation budget? And typically, a lot of times it's less than what they're currently doing. And then there's what's going to happen with those things. And my challenge always is one of two things. Who can you delegate to, or what can you outsource? And what are the things that are the lowest priorities that if they just fell off, if they just dropped, what would happen? How much would it hurt you or your business? But you got to start someplace. You got to try. You have to free up time to be more intentional in the other areas of your life. And so if there's a risk or if there's a challenge or why wouldn't something work, it's people don't change habits. People don't change. They have a great 2-day experience. They have these epiphanies. They realize who they want to be, but they don't do anything with it. And that to me is the important of making adjustments in our schedule and our time to align our priorities. And number 2 is the accountability. Go in public. Who's holding your feet to the fire? And just the power of repetition, looking at your plan daily, weekly, monthly, not, the full thing, but snippets to say, am I heading in the direction that I have intentionally said I want to head in?
Perfect. Yeah, planning without implementation doesn't do any of us any good. Mm-hmm. It's like what they say, 90% of people buy a book and never read it kind of a thing. It's take that step, but you never actually implement it, so that's great. Sure. So you've talked about John Maxwell and what an influence he's had in your life and as a mentor. Do you think everyone, every business owner, we're talking to business owners, but maybe everyone needs a mentor, and why?
Yeah, I do. I mean, when I think about my blessings in life, at the very top would be the mentors I have, with John being the top one, but I've been blessed to have another or several incredible mentors. And I think about, so when I mentioned I worked with John 19 years, and when I made the move to Atlanta from where I grew up, um, the thing, I've been exposed to a lot of great things, but the number one thing was mentors, was people who are successful in life, not just vocationally, but in every aspect, and who have poured into me life on life, who've been willing to open up and not just hear the successful things I've done, hear the challenges I've had to work through, the brokenness, the mistakes, the failures, as well as the things that they've learned from it and are doing well. And I would not be where I'm at today. I would not be the man that I am today without mentors in my life. And so I do believe everybody needs mentors. I think it's broader than one. Advice I give around mentoring all the time is don't find a mentor who's, kind of be all things to you, because we all have strengths, we all have weaknesses. Have a portfolio of mentors, and go to them for mentoring in the area that they do exceptionally well. And then here's the other thing I believe with that: as we're poured into, I think we have the responsibility to give back and be a mentor to others. So don't just be an intaker. I don't care how young you are. I talk to a lot of leaders in their 20s, and they don't feel equipped, they don't feel ready, they don't feel like a mentor. I'm like, there's always someone. I mean, reach back to a kid in college or high school, but there are always people that you can be pouring into. A mentor doesn't have all the answers or expert in everything, but they're just willing to share their life experience, the good, the bad, the ugly of what they've learned, to invest into someone else. So you're touching on another subject that I'm passionate about and can get on my soapbox on, but I love mentoring.
No, that's perfect, and I totally agree. I actually, I've had people reach out to me, even when I was in my 20s, that were like, "Hey, this thing you taught me has changed the whole direction of everything I've done." And it was one little thing. So I agree. No matter what age you're at or what you can do, you've got something you can share. So here's one question I always have when it comes to mentors: how do you find the right ones? Like, how do you find them? How do you start that relationship? How do you identify those people?
Yeah, it's a really good question. I'm going to tell you what I think. I run in a unique circle, so for me, it's not been difficult. But I also think about where I grew up, and it would not have been easy to find mentors in kind of where I hailed from originally. I would look around, of just who is successful in life as you define success, in specific areas of life. So for me, kind of my journey, like I want someone in terms of their faith, spiritual journey. Who when I look at that, do I want? Okay. And then I go family, and then I go vocation, are kind of my three major buckets of mentors. So I'd look as wide as I need to. And then I'd approach them and just say, here's what I'm looking for. And a couple things I also recommend to folks in mentoring: don't put the burden on the person. Say, I'm going to always come prepared with my agenda. I'm going to come with my questions. You don't need to prepare anything. I'm going to come and do the heavy lifting. Ask to meet maybe once a quarter. Don't overwhelm them with every other week or every month. And then here's the question always to ask, especially as you try to broaden your network of mentors in your life. At some point in that mentoring conversation, ask them the question: who do you know that I should know? And it could be in that specific area you're talking to them about. It could be in general or another area that you want to grow in. But as you find that first layer of mentors, they're naturally going to be connected with other folks that can add value to you and kind of leverage their network to begin to expand your network.
Perfect. Um, Another topic I know you're pretty passionate about is leadership, and that's something that's going to apply to a lot of people here. So, as a small business owner, obviously, typically you're going to be the main leader. You're also hyper focused on your business and doing things the way you want. What's an easy way to identify if maybe you're not being an effective leader? Because you're not going to go out there and look for how to be a better leader or help or changes if you don't even realize you're having issues. And we've all worked for people that we thought could use some help in leadership, probably at some point. So if I'm a business owner, how do I step back for a second and go, am I actually being an effective leader? Or am I just running a company the way I want to run it and maybe missing a lot of things I could do better?
So I'll tell you that what I think is the best way, or my favorite way, maybe that, because it's a tough, when you're the boss, a couple things. Number one, you can ask them, but the challenge is when you're the boss, are you truly going to get transparent, authentic feedback. It is the rare person that will tell you to your face everything that you need to know when you're depending on them for a job. So what I'm crazy passionate about is something is I've led organizations that I did on an annual basis is a 360-degree assessment. And that way, you're going to know your peers. And as a business owner, you may not have true peers, but you can, that could be business partners. It could even be clients. But your employees have the opportunity to give you confidential feedback. And it's got to be, you got to make sure it truly is an assessment. It's confidential, that they know they can trust, and that you let them know, I'm passionate about growing as a leader. I know I'm not perfect. I know I have areas to improve. I want your genuine, authentic feedback so that I can be a better leader for you. And when you go with that spirit of humility and you let them know there's no repercussions for being honest, and then on the backside, regardless of what that feedback is, you don't try to figure out who gave you what feedback, or there's no negative repercussions on the folks that took the assessment on you. But then you share with them and you say, hey, here's what I learned. Thank you for the feedback. Here are areas that I know I need to improve in. Here are things that I'm going to begin to do differently to improve as a leader. And they see that spirit of humility, thankfulness for feedback, and then that you're actually taking action. And your people come around you. You engender greater loyalty there. They want to help you. You know, if there's areas that you've had to carry on your own and they realize it's a weakness and they see it, they'll jump in and help you in those areas if it's a strength. So my recommendation would be to do some kind of 360-degree feedback so that you are getting hopefully unbiased, unfiltered, real-time feedback from the people that you lead daily on your leadership.
That's great. Yeah, actually, I remember reading you're a Donald Miller fan too, and I always loved his story when he's on the plane with the guy going to one of his seminars that has no idea who he is. Yes. It's like, so what do you think of me? What do you think? Like, not knowing it's him. He's like, what do you think of Donald Miller? Do you think his programs? And he's like, he learned more in that 3-hour flight with this guy was completely honest about the thing than he would ever. And I know the one time over at Corporate America, I ran several locations, and I would show up and not let them know who I was, just to get a feel for what they thought of the management team, what the thing was, and that was great too. So I think
you were undercover boss before undercover.
I was, believe it or not. Yeah, I actually when I took my first corporate job, I spent 5 days traveling the country, just showing up and pretending I was a customer at all these different places, and nobody knew who I was until I took over everything. So to me, it just made sense. I wasn't mean about it, but I was like, let's see how we're doing. Let's see what they think of how we're doing. Let's see what they need, and it worked pretty well. So I do think, if you can give them that opportunity, or you can build enough trust that they believe in that opportunity, that's perfect. Yeah. So we probably have time for one last question. I know you're big on building the right teams. I know you're good at recommending how to do that. So we live in an area with a pretty depressed economy at this point. We're from Charleston, West Virginia, and we meet a lot of business owners that one of their biggest challenges is finding quality people in an area that has an undertrained, undermotivated, frankly, population that thinks that there's no point. Good or bad situation, how do you identify the best people? How do you find the best people? How do you cultivate the best people? Like, how do we get started with that as a small business owner when there's a lot of competition out there?
Yeah. So I look for the heart of people. I believe everybody has both core talents and then they have a heart passion for certain things. I believe when you can find someone that actually cares about the quality of what they do or cares for people, I will find a place for that kind of person when they have the drive, the attitude, the work ethic, kind of the intangibles or the soft skills, and create space and opportunity for them in an organization. There are certain environments I understand where more of those people flock to and are attracted to. But as I've been blessed to literally travel the world, I find those kind of people every place. And so that's who I would look for. And whether it's interacting with somebody at a restaurant, I've worked to recruit servers before because they just had an attitude, they had a positivity, they had a friendliness to them that I thought, man, this is the kind of person I would want representing my organization and my brand. And so I would put on the hat of I'm always looking for people, talent. And the number one thing that I'm looking for first is just their drive, their energy, their positivity, their enthusiasm. And they may be doing something completely different than my business, but if they bring those intangibles to the table, typically we can train them in the things that we need. So always have on that recruiting hat. As I work with leaders of teams or business owners, I'm always reinforcing that one of your top primary roles needs to be as the chief recruiter of your organization. And even if you don't have something today, always be looking for the people you want to have in the pipeline when you have that next opportunity. And the quality of our organizations will absolutely come down to the quality of the people in them. And so always be recruiting.
I think that's a great answer. Attitude and passion are skills, and always be open. Well, I think that's about it. We're about out of time. I didn't even get through most of my questions, to be honest, because you had some great answers, and I really appreciate it. No, it was great. Like, we talked about that. I added in questions that weren't there, so I probably evened out of the number, but that was really great. Like, I think we got to some good points that'll be helpful to a lot of business owners. So for everyone watching that wants to stay in touch with you, keep following you, go further with you on some of these topics, where's the ideal place for them to follow you and reach out?
Great. DavidSHoyt.com. DavidSHoyt.com. So thank you.
Perfect. Well, thank you for your time.
Yes.
It was great talking to you, and we look forward to talking to you soon.
Sounds awesome. Thanks. Appreciate it very much.
Bye.
Bye.